There are people who walk into your life not to bring light or love, but like a cold, invisible wind, slowly draining your vitality, manipulating every thought, every heartbeat. They plant seeds of self-doubt in your mind, making you look into the mirror and ask, who am I? Am I really good enough? They erode your self-esteem little by little until all that's left is a faint shadow of who you once were, a broken, trembling version of yourself trapped under their control. I know that feeling, and if you're here, perhaps you've felt it too. Narcissists, they want you weak, dependent, silently accepting the script they've written for your life. But let me tell you this, you were not born to live in chains, especially not theirs. What they never anticipated, and what I want you to realize today, is that you have the power to rise. Not through angry screams or loud revenge, but through quiet strength, unwavering inner peace, and a radiant life that no longer bears their shadow. They thought you'd always remain a captive in their toxic web, but they were wrong. Today, you get to take back control, not to prove anything to them, but to heal yourself, to live in alignment with who you truly are. In this video, I, as a psychologist who has deeply studied narcissistic behavior, will walk you through 10 powerful psychological strategies to dismantle the illusion of control that narcissists believe they have over you. This isn't just about fighting back. This is a real healing journey, one that rebuilds your self-worth and helps you become the strongest version of yourself. Stay with me until the very end, because what you'll learn today has the power to shift everything, not with noise or vengeance, but with quiet, powerful self-reclamation. Don't let them write one more page of your story. Today you hold the pen, and I'll show you how to write your next chapter with pride. Let's begin. Silence and indifference. Imagine a narcissist as a ravenous creature, lurking in the shadows, waiting to feed on the emotional crumbs you unknowingly drop. A worried glance, a trembling explanation, or an outburst of rage they've skillfully provoked. They don't just enjoy your attention, they survive on it, like parasites clinging to the lifeblood of narcissistic supply. The emotional energy that fuels their inflated disease. Every emotional reaction you give is a hit of dopamine to them. Every time you struggle, they smile. Not because they've won, but because they know you're still dancing to the distorted tune they composed. But what if you turn off the music? What if you step off the dance floor and leave them alone in icy silence? That's not just their worst nightmare. It's a psychological blow that shakes them to their core. Your silence is not passivity. Don't mistake it. It is a sharp weapon, forged from emotional self-regulation and deep self-awareness. A narcissist needs you to exist, not as a person, but as a mirror to reflect their false greatness. When you stop reacting, when you remain indifferent to their provocations or manipulative tears, you cut off the bloodline to their ego. They lose control and are thrust into an identity crisis they were never prepared to face. Picture this. They throw a perfectly crafted insult at you, expecting tears or rage, but instead you look them in the eyes, say nothing, and calmly walk away. In that moment, they don't just lose you, they lose themselves in the emptiness your silence creates. This strategy does more than confuse them. It reclaims your ultimate psychological power. Each time you choose silence over confrontation, you're not just protecting your energy. You're redefining yourself into someone they can no longer reach. They want fear, you stand tall. They want you to beg, you walk away. That's how you turn indifference into armor and silence into a sword. Not through conflict, but through quiet liberation. If this strategy resonates with you, hit the subscribe button now, because we're about to go even deeper into how you can flip the script on a narcissist. And tell me in the comments, have you ever used silence as your shield? I'd love to hear your story, because silence isn't the absence of words, it's the roaring sound of the power you're reclaiming. Use it and watch them crumble. 2, no explaining, no justifying, no defending. Think back to all the times you were dragged into endless arguments where the narcissist stood before you like a self-appointed prosecutor, accusing you with twisted words, blaming you for things you never did, distorting the truth until you were trembling, trying to defend yourself. I understand that pain, the feeling that you have to explain every breath, every thought, just to prove that you're not the monster they made you out to be. But here's the truth. They don't argue to understand, you argue to survive. They argue to dominate. And they don't want clarity. They crave submission. They feed on watching you plead, watching you get entangled in the web of debates they've already rigged against you. But when you refuse to engage, when you walk away from their arena without a single explanation, without a single justification, without even defending yourself, you don't just remove their control, you throw them into the pit of insecurity they've been trying so hard to cover up. Understand this, every time you explain, you hand them a rope to pull you back into their game. They don't care about logic. They care about watching you struggle, to be seen as innocent. But when you choose silence, when you meet their accusations with unwavering calm, no words, no pleading, no defense, you leave them standing alone on a stage with no audience, no opponent. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to face the uncomfortable truth. If you don't feel the need to explain, who are they to define your worth? The power of this strategy lies in the spiritual freedom it brings. Every time you choose not to explain, you remind yourself, I don't need their approval to know who I am. You don't need to defend your value to someone who only feels powerful by watching others fall apart. They want you to argue, to prove you're wrong. Let them scream into the void. They want you to justify yourself, to feel important. Let them suffocate in their own irrelevance. This is true autonomy. You are no longer a defendant in their counterfeit courtroom. You are the witness to your own freedom. And when they realize you no longer dance to their tune, they will spiral into the chaos they created. They need you to feel validated, but you don't need them to live. Your refusal to engage is the sharpest blade, bloodless, quiet, but powerful enough to cut the last thread they tried to bind you with. This isn't just a win against them, it's a declaration. You are the one steering your life now, and they no longer have a seat in it. 3, don't hope to change them. The narcissist has drained you with the hope that somewhere deep inside them, there's still a flicker of light, a tiny space of compassion, a capacity for change that you could somehow reach. I know that pain. The endless days spent trying to explain, believing that love, sincerity, or logic would melt the ice around their heart. You told yourself that if you tried harder, if you gave more, they would finally realize their mistakes and become the person you needed them to be. But here's the harsh truth you must face. A narcissist doesn't change, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. And the moment you stop pouring your energy into the illusion that you can fix them, you don't just preserve your strength, you cut the last string they've used to keep you orbiting their world. See them clearly for what they are. A narcissist is not a puzzle to solve, nor a project to complete. They are an emotional black hole devouring every effort and hope you throw in, only to leave you with emptiness and disappointment in return. Like, they don't care about your sincerity. They only care that you keep circling around them, feeding the grandiosity that props up their ego. Every time you try to change them through advice, through tears, through relentless patience, you unknowingly hand them victory. You're still there, still investing, still trapped. But when you let go of that fantasy, you flip the script. They are no longer the center of your story, no longer the destination you're striving toward. The true strength of this strategy lies in the clarity it brings. You don't need them to change in order to be whole. You are already whole, whether they acknowledge it or not. Letting go of hope is not giving up. It's liberation. It's how you reclaim your time, your energy, and your mind, resources far too precious to waste on someone who never valued them. And when they realize you're no longer trying to save them, no longer begging for change, they'll finally face the emptiness they've always tried to escape. You don't need to prove anything. Your absence says it all. This isn't just a win over them. It's the clearest proof that you're now in control of your destiny and they no longer have a role in it. 4, stay grounded and don't react to their emotional provocations. Look closely at their true nature. Narcissists are not strong, they only pretend to be. Behind their facade lies deep insecurity, hidden beneath the chaos they constantly try to stir in others. They provoke you, not because they're powerful or clever, but because they need your emotional reaction. That is how they feel in control. A carefully crafted insult, a seemingly casual but cutting remark, a deliberate action meant to hurt you, these are not random moments. They are hooks designed to pull you into their web. But when you remain calm, when you look them in the eye without flinching and allow their poison to dissolve into thin air, your composure becomes a spear, sharp, steady, and powerful enough to pierce through the false sense of superiority they've built. Your inner stillness is something they cannot tolerate, because it exposes their weakness in the face of someone who no longer plays by their rules. The true value of this strategy lies in the inner strength you reclaim. Each time you choose not to react to their negativity, you protect your spirit and build a fortress they cannot infiltrate. You don't need to scream to prove your point. You don't need to cry to show your hurt. Your composed silence speaks louder than any words ever could. This is how you begin to dismantle their manipulative grip, piece by piece, until they realize you are no longer a pawn in their game. They want you to spiral into chaos, you choose peace. They want you to collapse, you stand tall. And that is not just a win, it is your journey back to internal mastery, a powerful declaration that your emotions belong to you, not to their control. 5, stop needing their validation. Think back to the times you sat quietly, heart aching for a compliment that never came, waiting for a nod of approval from the narcissist, the one who made you feel like your worth depended on their crumbs of affection. I know that pain. The feeling that you don't exist unless they grant you a glance, a half-hearted praise, or even a condescending pat on the head. They made you believe your value was in their hands, that you were just a meaningless piece unless they placed you in their distorted puzzle. But here's the truth. They don't want you to know. The most painful moment for a narcissist is not when you shout back at them. It's when they realize you no longer need them to breathe, to live, or to feel whole. Let's strip away the illusion. Narcissists are not divine sources of light. They are empty shells needing to dim your light just to make theirs appear brighter. They want you to beg for their approval so they can feel important, so they can patch the bottomless void inside themselves. But when you rise, hold your head high, and live guided by your own internal compass, built on values no one can take from you, you strike straight at the heart of their fragile ego. They can no longer shape your reality. They no longer get to write the script of who you are. You become their greatest fear, a free soul, unmanipulated, unchained, and untouchable. And the beauty of this strategy is that it's not just about shaking their world, it's about healing yours. Every step you take away from their validation is a step closer to your truth, the version of you that doesn't rely on empty praise or shallow recognition. Live for what makes your heart race. Pursue the dreams that ignite your soul, not for their approval, but because you are worthy of a life that reflects your full brilliance. And when they see you shine through the smile you share with others, through the calm confidence you carry, they will recoil in the pain they inflicted on themselves. You don't have to scream your worth. Your radiant existence is enough. This is self-definition reclaimed, not a gift they give, but a fire you light from the ashes they left behind. 6. Know your worth and live by your personal principles. A narcissist is a master at planting seeds of doubt like toxic winds blowing through your mind, making you question whether you're truly good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. They want you to live in shame, bow in dependence, and hesitate at every step, waiting for their approval before you move forward. I know that pain, the way they distort your self-image, turning you into a lost soul who exists only to serve their inflated ego. But when you stand firm on the foundation of your core values, when you build a personal code that cannot be swayed by flattery or intimidation, you become something they cannot grasp, a towering mountain that only bruises them when they try to strike. Understand their game. Narcissists don't win because they're strong, they win by making you weak. They throw criticisms, passive-aggressive remarks, and subtle jabs to make you dig a hole of self-doubt and fall into it. But when you truly know your worth, when you realize that you do not need their validation to define who you are, you shatter the illusion that they have any power over your identity. Living by your personal principles isn't rigidness, it's your compass through the storm of manipulation. It's the flame that lights your way when they try to drag you into darkness. They want you to make decisions driven by fear, guilt, or anger. But when your actions stem from your unshakable values, you disarm them entirely, rendering them powerless before someone who is no longer led by emotional manipulation. The power of this strategy lies in the invincibility it gives you. You are no longer a puppet dancing to their erratic rhythms. You hold the strings now, drawing boundaries they cannot cross. They may scream or seduce, but when you remain anchored to your principles, honest with yourself, unwavering in what you know to be right, they are completely neutralized. Your worth is not in their hands. It lives in every decision you make, every step you take without needing their permission, This is the ultimate act of self-sovereignty. Not only have you broken free, you've become someone they can no longer reach, let alone control. When they realize you no longer bend, no longer compromise just to please them, they face their greatest nightmare, someone fully autonomous who does not need them to exist. You haven't just disabled them, you've risen above, through an inner strength they will never understand. This is not a victory to boast about. This is the survival of a soul that has reclaimed itself against every effort to bring it down. 7. Psychological freedom. No longer held hostage by the past. A narcissist doesn't just want to control your present. They want to imprison your mind in the shadows of the past, where every old wound is a thread pulling you back under their control. I know the nights you've spent haunted by cruel words, abusive actions, and the way they made you feel small and worthless. They've planted the idea that revenge is the only path to healing, a loud, angry battle to prove them wrong. But the truth is far deeper. Real revenge is not retaliation, it is psychological freedom. When your mind is no longer bound by the pain they left behind, when you rise and take ownership of your emotional landscape, you sever the deepest chain they ever had on you. Their power wasn't in what they did, it was in the way you kept reliving it. They want you to remain stuck in memories of their harm, so that every echo of pain becomes a silent applause for their dominance. But when you choose psychological freedom, you burn the bridge they once used to invade your spirit. This doesn't mean erasing memories. It means refusing to let those memories lead your life. You no longer make decisions through the lens of old pain, no longer hear their voice every time you try to believe in yourself. Instead, you take the wheel, choosing how to feel, how to think, and how to live. Not as a victim, but as someone who has risen above. The true value of this strategy is deep-rooted healing. Every day you live free from the manipulation of the past, you reshape your life, not according to what they did, but according to who you want to become. They wanted you to be the permanent failure in their story. You rewrite the script, casting yourself as the powerful, unshaken protagonist. This is the highest form of emotional sovereignty. You don't need their apology. You don't need their acknowledgement to find peace. Your peace comes from within, from the strength you forged through every storm they tried to bury you under. When they see you no longer haunted, no longer turning back for justice or closure, they lose the last thread tying you to them. You haven't just escaped, you've outgrown them. You live in a reality where they no longer have access. This is not a triumph to parade. It is the quiet, magnificent freedom of a soul that has shattered its chains and now walks its own path with a calm heart and a clear mind. 8, set boundaries. A narcissist doesn't just want to enter your life, they want to invade it, to claim every corner of your soul as their domain. I understand those moments when you tried to compromise, hoping a little kindness would soften them, only to find they push further, tearing down every limit you tried to set. They see your kindness as an invitation, your silence as an open door to deepen their manipulation. But when you set boundaries, not with weak pleas, but with firm, non-negotiable lines, you don't just stop them, you build a wall of steel that they crash into, only to realize they no longer have the power to cross it. Here's the truth. Narcissists don't respect boundaries because they don't believe you have the right to possess them. They will test you, scream at you, and use every tactic from seductive charm to violent outbursts to make you shrink back and tear down your defense. But boundaries are not suggestions, they are declarations of self-worth. You don't need to explain why no means no, and you certainly don't need to negotiate for your limits to be respected. When you stand your ground, ignoring unsolicited messages, cutting off toxic conversations, or simply walking away when they cross the line, you force them to face a bitter reality. They are no longer the center of your universe. The power of this strategy lies in the protection it gives you. Every boundary you draw is a brick in the fortress of your inner self, where you stand strong and untouchable by their manipulation. They want you to feel guilty for saying enough. Turn that guilt into fuel to stand even firmer. They want you to fear the consequences of rejecting them. Let that fear ignite your inner strength. This isn't just resistance. It's the process of reclaiming ownership of your life, one step at a time, until you are the one who decides who gets to enter and who stays out. And when they realize your boundaries cannot be broken, they will flail in the helplessness they never expected. You don't need to fight to prove anything. Your consistency is enough to make them stumble. That's the greatest value. You're not just protecting yourself from them. You are building a version of yourself they can no longer reach or shake. Setting boundaries is not a defense, it's a declaration. You are the master of your own life, and they no longer belong in the sacred space you've reclaimed. Now, live a life that's truly your own. The narcissist once made you believe that your life only had meaning if it revolved around them, that your joy, your purpose, even your breath had to be filtered through their distorted lens. I understand the pain of losing yourself in the effort to please them, when each day was spent either avoiding their wrath or begging for their rare approval. But when you choose to live for yourself, not to please them, not to prove anything to them, you ignite a flame they can never extinguish. You're no longer a satellite spinning around their lifeless planet. You are the sun in your own universe. Their true nature becomes clear. Narcissists don't want you to live authentically because that means they lose their source of attention. But when you walk your own path, pursuing real joy, nurturing what makes your heart come alive, you disarm them without a single confrontation. This is the highest form of self-ownership. You don't need their permission to be happy. Every decision you make for your own well-being is a clean break from the ropes they once used to bind you. Living your own life is how you recreate yourself, step by step, into someone stronger than they ever imagined. They wanted you to stay invisible, you shine brightly. They wanted you dependent, you rise in self-reliance. This isn't just victory, it is the survival and rebirth of a soul that is finally returned to its own light. 10, don't give them another chance to re-enter your life. A narcissist doesn't walk away because they've changed. They walk away when there's nothing left to extract, only to return the moment they smell an opportunity to drain you again. I understand the fleeting moments of vulnerability when they come knocking once more, armed with sweet promises and a mask of fake remorse. But every time you crack open the door, even just a little, you invite back the darkness they once cast over the light you fought so hard to reclaim. When you firmly shut the entrance, you're not just rejecting them. You're declaring that your life is sacred ground, untouchable territory where they no longer have the right to step. Recognize their game. Narcissists don't return because they value you. They return because they need you to fuel their hollow self. But when you slam the door shut, when you stop responding to their texts, ignore their bait, and decline every invitation, you sever the rope they tried to climb back in with. This is the ultimate act of self-protection. You only need to stand firm and let your decisive no speak louder than words. The power of this strategy lies in the control over your future that you reclaim. You no longer allow them to write another chapter in your story. They want you to open the door so they can manipulate again. You turn that door into a fortress. This isn't just rejection. It's a bold declaration that you deserve a life untouched by their presence. You have walked through the very fire the narcissist once used to burn you down, and now you stand tall, not as a charred victim, but as a warrior forged in the ashes. From the silence and indifference that shake their core, to the refusal to seek their validation, from staying grounded against emotional provocations, to no longer explaining yourself or seeking their approval, from knowing your worth and living by your principles, to reclaiming psychological freedom from the past. From setting unbreakable boundaries, letting go of the fantasy of changing them, living your own life, to locking the door for good. Each strategy is a sharp blade, cutting every last cord they ever used to control you. They wanted you to remain a puppet in their twisted play. But you tore up the script, walked off their stage, and began writing your own story. Look at the journey you've made. You've turned calmness into a weapon, firmness into a fortress, and freedom into a flame no one can extinguish. Narcissists are not powerful because they are strong. They were powerful because you once allowed them to cross your boundaries. But now you've taken back your power, not through rage or revenge, but through the quiet strength of a soul that has come home to itself. They may still scream in the distance, trapped in their own chaos, but their voice no longer reaches you. You've outgrown them. Not to prove something to them, but to live in alignment with your truth, strong, sovereign, and untouchable. This isn't just a victory over the narcissist. It is your victory for you and by you. Every day you live without them, every moment you choose yourself is proof that you haven't merely survived, you've blossomed. Your life now belongs to you, not to manipulation, not to pain, and certainly not to them. So walk forward, head held high and heart wide open, because you've taken it all back and there's nothing left for them to steal.